Hey, welcome, guys. This video is going to be all about relationships, what they are, how to read them on an ER diagram, and also foreign keys and creating relationships using foreign keys in SQL. So let's go and look at this example here from the workshop again. This is going to be for defining what relationships are, the different types, and then how to actually read them and understand them from an ER diagram. So we're gonna hit a few birds with, I guess, one stone throw right here. So let's look at this example right here. So we have a database with, it looks like 4 different relationships, and we want to go see and kind of talk through each of these relationships. I could just give you, the definitions for each of them, but I feel like the best way to learn this is just by looking at an ER diagram and kind of talking through the different relationships and getting a really strong intuition behind what each of them are. So I just want to make sure I'm recording. And we are. Okay, good. So first off, um, I have this little key right here. You don't need to memorize, the ER diagram depiction of each one of them if you have this key right here. So I'm going to have this right here, and it's going to kind of help us talk through each of these relationships. So let's get to this first relationship right here. We have the song written by artist relationship. And when I'm looking at this, I can see that there is a straight line between both of them and this little relationship diamond here. So just by looking at this, I can tell from the diagram that this is going to be a many to many relationship. So what does that actually mean, though? Let's go talk this relationship through. We can see that a song is written by many artists, and an artist can write many songs. So are you following through with what I'm saying? Because it's literally in the description of the relationship. Again, a song is written by many artists, and an artist can write many songs, many to many relationship. And I kind of think that this makes sense. An artist can obviously write, one song, but an artist can write many songs. And on the other hand, a song can be written by many artists. This is very common. If a couple artists want to collaborate on a song, then I think that makes sense. So we can say that this is a many to many relationship. So in this relationship, an artist can have multiple songs, and a song can have many artists. Let's look at the second example right here. Song and album in this relationship. So looking at this, I can see that this is going to be a one to many relationship because I have this arrow right here, and then I have a straight line. So what does this mean, though? All right, so this is a one to many relationship. So again, let's just talk it through. So album can have many from the straight line songs, but a song can only belong to one album. And talking through that, I think that makes sense to me. Obviously, an album can have many songs, but a song, maybe it can only belong to one album. And I think that's fine. So song belongs to one album, but an album can have many songs, one to many relationship. All right, let's look at another one. I'm going to skip to the fourth one, artist and user account. So an artist can have one account, and an account can only have one artist, one to one relationship. And I think that makes sense. An artist can only own one account. You can't have an artist making 20 different accounts. And on the other hand, an account can only be for one artist. So you can't be a manager and have, 10 different artists from your label on your account. I think that makes sense, one to one relationship, just by looking at this because we have 2 different arrows right here. And then again, going back to the third one, album and artist, what kind of relationship is this? An album can have many artists on it, and an artist can have many different albums. So again, an album belongs to many artists, and an artist has many albums. And again, that makes sense. An album can be written by many artists. It's common for artists to collaborate on albums. And on the other hand, an artist can obviously write or have many albums. So if you ever want to, a rule of thumb just for looking at this is, if you don't want to memorize anything, really easy rule of thumb is that straight lines in ER diagrams correspond to multiple or many. So if I see two straight lines, I read that as many and many. So that's going to be a many to many relationship because a straight line means many. On the other hand, a arrow is going to correspond to only one. So if I see an artist user account and I see two arrows between these, I automatically know that this is going to be a one-to-one relationship. And if you don't believe me, you can look at the legend over here. Two arrows means one-to-one, and straight lines mean many to many. And then in the middle right here, we know that straight line means many, and an arrow right here means one. So if you ever see an arrow in a straight line, that's going to be a one to many or a many to one relationship. So now that we know what the different types of relationships are and kind of what a relationship is, relationship just brings two tables together. We can go look at how do we create relationships. So the way that we create relationships in SQL is going to be through using this thing called a foreign key. And a foreign key is a restraint that we place on one column of one table and point it to another table, creating a reference between the two different tables. And if you didn't 100% understand that by listening to my definition or the definition on the slide, that is totally fine. That is totally normal. We're going to go over three different examples of foreign keys and how to create the different relationships between them. But just really simple definition of foreign key is just something that you place on a table and connect it to another table, creating a relationship between those two tables. And I think when we go over these examples, it's going to make a lot more sense. So let's look at this first one right here. We have a one-to-one relationship. And when we look at this example right here, this makes perfectly good sense why this is one-to-one. We have capital cities and countries. A capital city can only have one country, and a country can only have one capital city. And I think that makes total sense. I'm not a history person, but countries can only have one capital. Again, not a history person. I don't know, but let's look at this relationship. Actually, this table right here. So we want to create a relationship between these two tables. So what do? So what we're going to do is we're going to have this helper column called country ID. And what this column is going to do, this is a special column that we add that is going to contain the country ID for every single capital city in this table. And so we create this column right here, and it's going to have the country IDs. And we're going to place a foreign key constraint on this country ID column right here. I wish I could draw on my screen right now, but we're placing a foreign key on country ID, and we're going to point it to this countries table. And when we do that, we're going to be creating a relationship between capital cities and countries. So how do we actually go and read this? How does this work? So we can go through each capital city and we can find out what its country is. So first off, we have Washington, D.C. Its country ID is 2. And what is the country ID of 2 in this countries table? Because remember, we're pointing the foreign key to another table that we want to create that relationship with. So country ID 2 is going to point to USA. And I'm still recording. Sorry, I just want to double check. And then we also have Ottawa right here. Its country ID is 1. That's going to point to Canada. So we can say Ottawa's country is Canada. And then we have Mexico City right here. Its country ID is 3, and that's going to be pointing to Mexico. So Mexico City's country is Mexico. And that makes sense. But we want to make sure that this so we created the relationship right here, but we want to make sure that this is a one-to-one relationship. So how do we create that? Well, we want to make sure that this foreign key column that we place is going to be unique and non-nullable. It's going to have those constraints right there. And when we place a unique and non-nullable foreign key on this table, and literally we're just adding the unique and non-nullable constraints to this country ID column, we're going to end up having an enforceable one-to-one relationship. So, if I try to add another thing in here, if I try to add, say, I'm going to open up a notebook and some logs from my project. If I try to add, say, I live in Los Angeles. Let's say I want to make Los Angeles another capital of the United States for whatever reason. And I want to say we're going to add a new thing for, it's going to be Los, so we're going to make that a little bit bigger. So this is Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is going to be part of USA. USA's country ID is 2. So I go and do that. And if I try to add this to the database, this is the database, the relational database management system that's running this database. It's going to veto this. It's going to reject this. Why? It doesn't know any geography, but country ID has a unique constraint on this. So when I add this, we can see that 2 is already taken. If I tried to add this would not be unique. So because of that unique constraint, that's going to get vetoed. If I try to create another one, say, I don't know, I try to create New Camp City, and I say that doesn't belong to any country, so I'm just going to say null. Again, that's not going to work either because country ID is non-nullable. So I can't add, New Camp City to this. That's not going to work. That's because this is null and it's not nullable. So that, again, the database is going to veto that, and our relationship integrity is going to be protected from that. All right, let's go to the next one. One-to-many relationship. So we have an orders table and a customers table. And we have a one-to-many relationship where a customer can have many orders, but a order can only belong to one customer. So how do we create this? So again, we're going to just place a foreign key column in one of the tables, but we want to make sure that we are placing the foreign key column in the many table. All right. So we're going to have a customer ID column that's going to have all the IDs of the customers who bought each order. And we want to make sure that that column is in our many table, which is the orders table. And we place a foreign key constraint on this column and we point it to the customers table. So now if we want to read this, it's going to be super easy with this relationship. So if we want to see, who spent $49.12 on their on their order, what customer is that? So we can see that was customer number 1, who is Alice, who spent $100.12 on their order. That's going to be customer ID number 2, which is Bob. So Bob is order number 1. And we can just trace it by using, these arrows and just by mapping customer ID to customers.id. And it's really simple. Now, where it gets a little complicated, though, is when we have a many-to-many relationship. And this is because we need an intermediate or bridge table. Bridge, I know how to spell table between the two tables that we have right here. So again, let's just look at this relationship. So we have a books table and we have an authors table. And it's many-to-many because an author can write many books, but a book can also be written by many authors. So we need to have some kind of bridge between these two tables so we can get over them. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our books table, our authors table, and then instead of having like a book ID column right here with a foreign key and an author ID column, a book ID column inside our authors table, and then an author ID column inside our books table, Instead, we're going to create a bridge between these two tables. That's going to contain the book ID and author ID columns between the two. And not only that, but we're going to place two foreign keys on this book authors table. So we're going to put one foreign key on the book ID column and point it to the books table, creating a bridge between books and book authors. And then we're going to place another foreign key on the author ID column, creating a bridge between book authors and the authors table. And once we have those two foreign keys, and we have that bridge set up, then we can we create that relationship and we can read the different values between each of them. So let's take a look at this. Middle Moon. Who wrote the book Middle Moon? This is really easy. It's not easy. It's a little complicated, but if we know how this works, it is easy. So who wrote Middle Moon? So Middle Moon has a book ID of 1. So we cross the bridge and we look at book ID. Okay, 1. That points to Middle Moon. And the author ID who wrote book ID number 1 is also going to be 1. And that points to Alice. So we can say Middle Moon was written by Alice if we cross the bridge. And again, we start with the book ID 1, Middle Moon. We cross the bridge again using our foreign key. We go down and we look for the book ID is 1. And 1 points to 3, that author ID, which is Carol. So Carol also wrote Middle Moon. So by looking at this, Alice and Carol wrote Middle Moon. And all we have to do is just cross the bridge. And we can do that the other way too. If I want to see what books did, what books did Bob write? What did Bob write? Okay, so Bob has an author ID of 2. We go to the author ID table and we go down to 2. And we cross that and we get a book ID of 2, which points to Smooth Sailing. So we can say with confidence that Bob wrote Smooth Sailing. So another thing that, to make it more complicated, I'm sorry guys, but we want to make sure that the foreign key that we place on book authors, both of these foreign keys that we place on book ID and author ID, are unique and non-nullable. That's going to enforce our many-to-many relationship. So we don't actually really need to remember to do that. And I can explain that with a question. So follow along. Students usually ask, okay, Eric, where is the primary key going to be on this book authors table? You said in the other slide that every single table needs to have a primary key. So where is it? Is the primary key going to be on book ID or is it going to be on author ID? And the answer to that is yes. It's going to the primary key is going to be placed on the combination of book ID and author ID. We're going to place one primary key on both of these columns here. And when we do that, it's going to automatically make these columns unique and non-nullable just by the nature of being a primary key. Anything that has a primary key, it's going to be unique and non-nullable. So we're going to place the primary key on both of these columns. And that way we end up with a many-to-many relationship. And so by going over all 3 of these relationships, we can see how we can create relationships one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many by using foreign keys.